Imperialists historically employed dehumanization and homogenization as strategies to comprehend and subjugate the oppressed or those perceived as different.
European people with blue eyes and blonde hair being killed, children being killed every day with...
This isn't a place, with all due respect, like Iraq or Afghanistan, that has seen conflict raging for decades. This is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen.
They employed these methods to fabricate novel realities, to assert dominance over occupied nations. A prominent figure of colonial Britain in the early 20th century, Lord Cromer, who expressed in his book on Egypt that the Oriental frequently exhibits behaviors, communication styles, and cognitive processes that are fundamentally distinct from those of the Europeans. The idea that Oriental people are seen as fundamentally different from others has been used as a justification for committing terrible acts and to support the goals of expansion and oppression. It is thought that we are congenitally brutal, monstrous, and prone to be terrorists. Just like that, we are born with these monstrous traits, not because our nations are oppressed and killed almost on a daily basis by the occupied forces in Palestine. Gaza is suffering from the longest occupation in modern history. According to international laws, it is and has been occupied since 1967, 56 years, more than half a century of bloody occupation. The collective punishment exerted currently on more than 2 million people living there on one of the world's most densely populated areas is something humans have never seen in modern history. It is a continuous act of oppression that is exerted now over generations of Palestinians. Remember this footage. محمد الدرة, the child that was murdered by the Israelis in his father's lap 20 years ago. Now, this is his father, this week, in front of the bodies of his two brothers, who were also murdered in the current Israeli raids. So far, around 1,000 Palestinian children, perhaps more, have been killed by the bombardment, with around 3,000 innocent Palestinian civilians killed. There are 167 children under the rubble. They are not out of the rubbles yet. Now, you must excuse me if the numbers are not accurate, as the fatalities must be increasing by the minute. As a surgeon, it behooves me to think how the medical staff is coping in Gaza hospitals. I treated once only 40 injured during a suicide bombing by ISIS that occurred in Kuwait in 2015. The whole hospital where I was working was paralyzed despite being fully staffed and equipped. How are they coping now with constant bombardment with thousands of injured civilians? A doctor working with Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, said the other day that he was roaming around the hospital for 2 hours. 2 hours roaming just to find drinkable water. There is a hospital in Gaza called Kuwait Hospital, built by my country, Kuwait. The hospital staff were told to evacuate it, leaving patients behind because it will be bombed by the Israelis. As a surgeon who wants help, I cannot even enter Gaza, nor any other help can reach there. How can one look at all these atrocities committed in front of one's eyes and not feel devastated? This goes back to the dehumanization and homogenization process mentioned earlier. It must be that these people, those who are left behind in the hospitals, the brutes, or the animals as called by the Israeli defense ministers,
אין חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק. הכל סגור. אנחנו נלחמים בחיות אדם ואנחנו נוהגים בהתאם.
are not humans as we are, and therefore they must suffer less. They are all the same. They are animals and terrorists. Even their children are not like ours. We all wonder, how could ordinary men carry so much evil in them? I just happened to watch a documentary on Netflix called Ordinary Men. The documentary is asking, how could regular people in Germany do terrible things during World War II? It shows that these Germans weren't inherently more evil than others. Propaganda and the media, however, convinced them that the innocent Jews were less humans than them, which led them to commit these atrocities. What we are watching and have been watching by the minute on our smartphones and social media of daily suffering in Gaza as something that we can't see except in World War II documentaries. It makes us all participants in what's happening there. We cannot say to the future generations who will for sure ask, why was this allowed, that we didn't know or we didn't care. It came by the minute to us. This is making all the ordinary men who are watching these atrocities committed accountable for future generations.